Well, there's a few things here. They're all very personal. I think I'll start, since I've mentioned parents, with something that is very key to my mother, and that is a mug. Now, it's a very specific mug. So my book, which I've mentioned, is a memoir about my family, based on a show I did about my family called My Family, Not the Sitcom. And the sort of, I guess, the primary element of it, although there are lots of other elements, my dad's dementia and my upbringing in general, but the key driving element is my mum had an affair when I was young, which went on for a long time. Maybe in her own mind, certainly about 20 years, or there's some dispute about the facts. And the key element of the affair was it wasn't just an affair. It was an affair with a golfing memorabilia salesman, which led to her becoming obsessed, like overnight, with golf, a sport that no one in our family had ever shown any interest in at all, and certainly not golfing memorabilia. But suddenly, within about 3 months, the house is transformed into a palace, a shrine to golfing memorabilia. Basically, everywhere you look, there's another statue of Lee Trevino, right? It's, it's amazing. And if you see pictures, you just think, like, what? And she becomes
I've seen them, yeah.
She becomes a big figure in the golfing memorabilia world. She writes 5 books about golfing memorabilia.
5?
5, one of which sells quite well, apparently.
Yeah.
She starts a business called Golfiana, which is the same name as the business of her lover.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all amazing. But to get onto this particular thing, because the book is about, and my general sense of my origin story is about, not I'm furious about this in a kind of Prince Harry way, but isn't it rich and strange and amazing and probably key to why I'm a comedian, right? And
Yes.
I find it very, very sort of like hilarious, but also poignant at some level, because my mum was a refugee from the Nazis, and I think this was part of her trying to reclaim some lost glamour that she might have had, etc., etc. So there is this mug, right? What happened was, and I can't tell you how obsessed, it was kind of erotomania my mum was with this guy. She wrote many poems.
I read some of the poems in the book, and I struggled because it's so raw, and it's so this is the truth. This is your actual mum. These are the actual words.
Yeah.
It's not so much warts and all. It's anal warts and all.
It's pornography.
It's kind of
poetic pornography.
But it says so much about you. You've got such an analytical brain that you're somehow you take almost like a humorous academic approach to it. There's an analysis of all of it.
Yeah. Well, there's a specific analysis of it, which I think was my way through it.
Yeah.
Which was my mum, I say early on, and this is a very comedian thing, I say it very early on, and I use just a sort of innocuous email, that my mum didn't understand how to use inverted commas.
Yes.
She was always using them completely wrongly. And you're supposed to use inverted commas when you mean something different from what, and she couldn't do that. And she put, so then much later on, when she's saying things like nibble my clitoris in her poetry and putting it in inverted commas, I go to the inverted commas.
Yes.
Which some would say, well, that's a way of not having to deal with the fact that someone is nibbling your mum's clitoris. Right? It's to look at the punctuation. Maybe. But it's also fucking hilarious.
Yeah, well,
right?
This is it, yeah. But it's telling of your comedic brain that you're able to find it funny.
Yeah.
Because
I'll tell you something. I don't know if you... Sorry, but when I found that, so that book of poetry, which I found after she died, which was quite a long time ago when I first did the show in like 2016.
Did you know, or did you have an inkling when you were young that something was going on? Or...
More than an inkling, my mum was incredibly flagrant about the affair. I mean, she loved telling people about the affair.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, the golf itself was a massive red or perhaps white flag to the whole thing. But she wanted to tell people all the time. And all me and my brothers, our 2 brothers, knew about it. My brother tells a story, Ivor, my brother, who's a comedy writer now. It was the only way to go. Tells a story about how he had a girlfriend when he was about 20, brought her to see my mum at her stall, Golfiana, in Gray's Antique Market. And this girlfriend had never met my mum. And my mum's rattling on about golf and then mentions this bloke, David White, turns to Ivor's girlfriend and says, my lover of 20 years, and carries on talking to Ivor as if nothing's happened, right? Yeah. Constantly wanting to talk about it. Very proud of it, thought it made her glamorous, right? So I completely knew about it. And when I found the poetry, I wasn't surprised that she was writing erotic poetry, but I was surprised by how funny it was. And here's the key thing, and you'll know this, right, is that Nora Ephron says everything is copy, right? So whatever happens in your life and your family and whatever part of you wants to see, how can I use this? And that is a slightly sliver of ice in the heart of the comedian, but it is also a way of dealing with stuff, I think, in a useful way. So I yeah, some people would have shut that book and thought, "Oh my God, it's my mother's vagina that is being poeticized."
Imagine if that was the title of the book. Do you know what I mean?
It virtually is.
Yeah, yeah.
It virtually is. There's a lot of stuff about her vagina, also about other parts of her body, but mainly her vagina. And they'd have shut it because there's this notion of that's cringy and horrible.
Yeah.
And I think I had a moment of being shocked, and then I just thought this is amazing and brilliant, and it's fabulous material. Which, as I say, is partly about me being a comedian, but is maybe a way of processing it. Shall I get onto the mug?
No, yeah, but this is absolutely fascinating.
Okay, well, let me tell you. I mean, this is because a lot in terms of what I've just said. About
I should point out, I love the book, by the way.
Thank you.
But I love the book. But it's so what I loved about it is that it's so specific, obviously, but it's not it's not a broad memoir. It's like this. It's like in terms of nooks and crannies. It's so. I guess you read it and you find yourself.
My mum's nooks and crannies.
Yeah, but you find yourself. Like you say early on in the book that the aim is to get the specifics.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And
because the reason I think I'm just obsessed, as you know, with sort of truth. But there was a big truth that was being missed at my mother's funeral, which was people coming up to me and saying she was wonderful. What a wonderful woman. And I thought, what does that mean? Nothing, right? So if you want to memorialise someone, i.e. make them live in the memory, you can't do that. There's no point in idealising people because you can say that about anyone.
Yeah.
Can I do this? Because I think
Tell me about the mark.
I think this really shows what I'm talking about.
I love this story.
I think this really shows what I'm talking about, which is so. One of the bleakest things you'll ever have to do. I don't think you've had to do this, but I'm afraid will have to do it. Is like clearing out your parents' house after one of them's died. I mean, actually, we weren't completely clearing out because my dad was still living there, but we were trying to sort through some of my mum's stuff. And my mum was a hoarder and had loads of stuff, and most of it was golf-based or whatever. And we're wondering what to do with it and all the rest of it. And it's really grim. And my mum died very suddenly and quite violently, a massive sort of what I think in fact was a drug overdose because she was taking far too many different painkillers and whatever. Right. And it was terrible. Anyway, we're there, me and my brothers, and my younger brother suddenly comes up to me and he hands me something. I couldn't see what it was at first. He says, "I found this in the cupboard. I was going to smash it," he said. "I was going to smash it, but you might want it." And I looked at it. It was a mug, and on the mug was a picture of my mother's lover.
Right.
At the back of the thing, she had a mug printed with a picture of David White. And what I particularly loved about it was that he was on both sides. Yeah. He was on both sides of that mug, just stealed away at the bottom of the cupboard. So I thought, I know what to do with this. So I didn't tell my older brother that we'd found it. And then about an hour later, there's a call for a cup of tea to deal with the sort of sadness of this moment. And I just hand him his tea in that mug. And he pissed himself laughing. I mean, really laughed and laughed. Which meant for a few minutes there was laughter in what was at that moment a house of death, right?
Yeah.
And that's what laughter is.
But it's about somebody having the courage to flick the switch.
Yeah.
Like my brother's very good at that. My mum had pericarditis, she had a bad hip, she had COVID, just lots of little niggling things. And me and Daniel went to see her. And she was like, "Thanks for coming, you two. You've done my mental health the world of good." And my brother went, "Fuck me, have you got that and all?" And it was so unnecessary.
Yeah, brilliant.
That it suddenly made her smile.
Yeah,
But it's like, I love that. It's always, and it doesn't always work, but when it does, a rainbow is created.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And people are frightened, I think, of doing it. People are frightened of thinking, like, what if I say the wrong thing?
But in that moment, in that sadness, you're looking at it. It's such a beautifully awful joke that you're looking at this mug.
Yeah.
But both of you're sort of like temporarily suspended from the world because you're kind of lost in laughter.
Yes.
And then you sort of billow back to the sadness.
Yeah. But I think later on in the book, when I was asked to do your podcast, I think in the book, I talk about people saying that my mum was a wonderful woman, right? And what wonderful means. And wonderful for a lot of people means like a wonderful sunset or an amazing view or a Leonardo da Vinci. For me, that mug means a wonderful woman. And what wonderful means is like a wonderful sunset or an amazing view or a Leonardo da Vinci. For me, that mug means a wonderful sunset or an amazing view or a Leonardo da Vinci. For me, that mug means a wonderful sunset or an amazing view or a Leonardo da Vinci. For me, that mug means a wonderful sunset or an amazing view or a Leonardo da Vinci. For me, that mug means a wonderful sunset or an amazing view or a Leonardo da Vinci. For me, that mug means a wonderful sunset or an amazing view or a Leonardo da Vinci. For me, that mug means a wonderful sunset or an amazing view or a Leonardo da Vinci. For me, that mug means a wonderful sunset or an amazing view or a Leonardo da Vinci. For me, that mug means a wonderful sunset or an amazing view or a Leonardo da Vinci. For me, that mug means a is an object of wonder.
Yes.
Because it's like created a moment of laughter, but it also like it shows something about my mum that this was probably something she had made many years after the height of the affair.
Yeah.
She kept the fire burning for this guy. It was in her and my dad's house, and she had it at the back of the cupboard. And maybe every so often she got it out and had a cup of tea from it, and it made her feel like I had my passionate affair.
Yeah.
And all of that I think is amazing. It is wonderful.
Yeah, and it's very rare that deep passion and cups of tea go together.
It's very,
like,
very
do you know what I mean?
It's rare, but that is one of the things that's beautiful about it because, like how I actually have never done it. Although when I did the show, I think the people who put the show together, the stage show, they made a little mug for me of exactly looking like that, but with my head on David White's head.
Yeah.
But I don't actually know how I presumably it's quite easy that you go to a shop and you have a photo and you get a mug printed.
That's a good point. Yeah, I hadn't thought about the journey that your mum went on to get it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then
I wonder. I bet my mum, even when she went, I'm assuming it was Oxford Street, to wherever you go and get a mug printed. I bet my mum said, this has been my lover of 20 years.
Yeah.
I bet she mentioned it to the mug guy, who doesn't understand what she's talking about.
Well, if she saw a mug and, saw that you could... But it's even better if it just absentmindedly came to her one day. Do you know what I mean? If she was like, I tell you what I should do.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean?
I know what I'd like to have on that mug. Yeah.
Just walking through the park.
But also, my mum was a woman who had to emblazon stuff. She was always like... putting golf stuff on things or Jewish stuff on things, or she'd send a picture, endless photographs that she'd embossed on something. She had like thousands of these, when I had kids, thousands of these little photo albums, and she'd make T-shirts. She would do all that. But the fact that a little corner of that was reserved for a golf lover. Actually, here's a little scoop for you. It's not that much of a scoop because I haven't mentioned it, but he died very recently. And that was a sort of interesting thing. What actually happened was HarperCollins, who published my book, had said, look, we're slightly worried about David White because...
Did they kill him? is that what happened? Imagine that.
It's possible.
It's
They're a big company. They're a Murdoch-owned company, so who knows?
Way of making it easy.
Succession. But they were a bit like, look, so I had a big conversation with the lawyers, and the lawyers said a brilliant thing. They said, well, he can't sue you for libel because basically this is all your mum's story. It's all her love letters, her poetry or whatever. So that all that is true. It's her version of the story. But he could maybe for intrusion of privacy.
Right.
They think it's unlikely because you did the show and he didn't do it then and blah, blah, blah. But it's possible. And then the lawyer said the most brilliant thing. The lawyer said, but I think this book is too funny. I think no judge will read this book without laughing, and so therefore he'll throw it out. He or she will throw it out. Just think, don't be silly. It's too funny. Don't worry about it. So they went ahead with it with no changes. And I was still a bit worried about it. And
what
then,
a great... surely you've got that as a review.
Yeah, I know.
This book is too funny to be sued over.
Too many judges will laugh while reading it.
I love that.
No, it was really great. But then, so when I was doing the show in the West End, David White's half-sister and his niece used to come and see it regularly. I think 4 times they came to see it.
Oh,
wow. And then I was in this very odd situation after this meeting with the lawyers of thinking, maybe I'll just write to Sue and find out how David is. Right? I don't quite know how to put this because it's a delicate conversation. Because basically, I'm writing to find out if he's still alive, right? And they didn't get on, but nonetheless, it's still. So anyway, I wrote to her and just said, "How is David? How's he doing?" Well, I'm just letting you know I've got this book out, and she was like, "Oh yeah, he's okay. He lived in Slovenia, whatever. I think he's fine, but he, whatever." Anyway, I thought, okay, that's a bit inconclusive. And then literally, I think it was like 2 weeks before it came out, she wrote to me and said, I thought you should know, David was having his breakfast in Slovenia this morning and rolled over and died. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't put my hands in the air and shout yabba dabba doo. I was quite kind of like, oh, that's all the main players off the stage of my origin story.
Yeah.
And so I'm a little sad about that. But in terms of him and his loves...
Do you reckon he finished his breakfast? It must be like, imagine if you got 2 boiled eggs and you're just tapping them and you just... That feeling when you put the first soldier in. I know he was nailing your mother, but I hope he had 1 dunk at least.
Yeah, I think actually that Sue told me it was cornflakes.
That's fucking heartbreaking.
She may have been extemporising.
Yeah.
But I think she said he rolled over after had his cornflakes.
Slovenian own brand cornflakes.
Yeah. Jesus.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, and I think I can.
It's so specific.
I think I can libel him now that he's dead. I think he'd gone to Slovenia because he was a bit of a con man.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, there's a whole section in the book about how he once convinced my mother to sell these antique golf prints on his behalf, and then they turned out to be laser photocopies put in an old frame. And what's amazing about that is this was like 1990, so it's not like now where amazing with AI you could make that look that must have looked totally shit.
Yeah,
and
totally.
yet my mother sold it to a golfing memorabilia salesman, and only like 9 months later, when he had his collection valued, did they find out these were forgeries.
Oh, no.
At which point, there's a long story. My mum was thrown out of the Golfing Memorabilia Society, as was David White, and my mum started writing letters under an assumed name to various golf clubs, trying to get David White cancelled for doing this because she blamed him.
Yeah.
She wrote the letters under an assumed name, which was William Wallace.
Wow. I mean, that's incredible, isn't
It's
it?
amazing. It's fantastic. Like, no one had told my mum, if you're going to use an assumed name, maybe not a really famous historical figure.
Extraordinary.
The eye might be drawn to that. Is it Mel Gibson who's writing to us here?
Yeah, but it's like that bit in Austin Powers where he says that he's called Richie Cunningham. It's like there's something like William Wallace. It's so perfect.
Yeah.
I love that.